Hi, everybody. Welcome to Oh Baby. It's me, Lauren. I'm here with Thomas, my son, who just turned one. Most of you know us, know my son, right? Can you say hello? I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. A lot of you know my son, Thomas. I'm here to talk about me today. Yay! Share my story a little bit. All right. So, my who am I before I became a mom? Larmans, Croc Mama. I am always just happy to be there, and I think Thomas got a lot of that trait from me as well. She's just happy to be here, and that's how a lot of my personality is I'm just happy to be there, happy to socialize, meet new people. I loved going out. I was the picture taker in my friend group. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, moved to New Jersey. My dad was retiring. I was living with my parents in New Jersey. They were retiring, moving to South Carolina. I did not want to go to South Carolina. So I said, you know what? Let me go on an adventure. I packed up and I moved solo to St. Petersburg, Florida. I had a couple friends there whom I still keep in touch with. I still have a lot of good friends there. That's where I met Thomas's dad. Him and I are not together anymore. We're civil. We have a working relationship. Um, It's hard sometimes. He has supervised visitation here at the house. We'll get into that too. Thomas was born 4 weeks early. Um, I remember the one night I was laying in my bed and he wasn't moving like he normally was. And I called my mom and I said, Mom, I think we should go to the hospital to get checked. So her story about it is funny. She'll be on the show later on in a couple episodes. Um, I'll have her tell the story of when she got that call. Her perspective is pretty funny. So we went to the hospital. They hooked us up. Baby's heart rate was fine. My blood pressure was abnormally high. So they said, okay, we're going to keep you for that. So they admitted me, did an ultrasound. Turns out I had no amniotic fluid left. So they said, okay. I remember the two doctors, they came into the room and they said, well, you're not going home. I said, what do you mean I'm not going home? And they said, well, when you go home, it's going to be with a baby. You're not leaving this hospital pregnant. I said, okay. Uh, okay. I mean, you got to listen to your doctors, right? Um, so Thomas's dad was still in Florida at that point. He was going to move when Thomas was born. So I called him. He ended up driving down that night. We stayed the weekend. I went in on a Thursday, stayed the weekend. They delivered Thomas cesarean on Monday. When Thomas was born, they reminded me that when a child is born early, especially boys, their lungs, something with their lungs, they're not fully developed yet. They might need a little bit of extra time. So I was prepared, for that. Um, so as they're doing the cesarean, they had the baby out. Congratulations, it's a boy. 10:26 a.m. And all I remember is looking over to the isolette where they had Thomas and the NICU team was working on him. And I just remember, like, babies should be crying when they're born. Why is my baby not crying? Why is he not crying? And I remember the anesthesiologist was starting to rub my thing and the monitor started to beep because I was working myself up so much. And they were like, "You need to calm down. You need to calm down." I was like, "No, why is he not crying?" Like, low key, I thought he wasn't okay, you know? Um, from that moment, everything in my life shifted. I could not. I couldn't remember who I was before Thomas. In that moment, Thomas was born and this new person was born in me. I went into recovery, Thomas went into the NICU. Everybody came. My parents were there, my sister was there, Thomas's dad's grandparents were there. Um, Thomas's dad took everybody one by one into the NICU. I couldn't go in there yet. Um, Finally, I was able to be wheeled into the NICU and see Thomas. And at that point, when I first met him, he didn't have any tubes on his face. He didn't have anything covering his face. And I just remember saying, like, what a beautiful boy. What a beautiful boy. I was just so in love and so happy, and everything was peaches and cream and love and butterflies. Unicorns were dancing around the room. So, they said they wanted to monitor him overnight because he was having a hard time eating. So I said, okay. So we went back to my room. Thomas stayed in the NICU. That night between Thomas's father and I wasn't great. Um, anyway, so the next day I got up and I walked myself into the NICU to sit with Thomas. And I was there every day. And then they thought it was a feeding issue, Turns out it wasn't just a feeding issue like we thought. We'd given birth, and then I had to transfer to a bigger hospital that could help Thomas, that had what Thomas needed. He needed a level 4 NICU, and we were at a level 3. Um, right? So we went over to the bigger hospital. Then they put him on oxygen there, did all the things, all the tests, cardiology, neurology, genetics, ENT, pulmonology. I've met every single specialist that hospital had to offer. Then they did a bronchoscopy. And that came back. I mean, they threw words at me. I had no idea what they were talking about. I always had my phone to Google. I was the Google queen. I have some medical background. Before Thomas, I was a phlebotomist. I drew blood for 13 years, which is a long time, but doing phlebotomy like that, you don't hear words like how I heard them. So after that, we did the bronchoscopy. They were talking about it, and everybody was just kind of quiet. Everybody kind of left me alone for a couple days. And I was like, maybe it's okay. Maybe, whatever. So I remember they wanted to have a family meeting. So a round table family meeting. I said, "Oh, this is probably what they do to get us discharged." I'm thinking, "We're going home. I'm taking my baby. We're going." Right? Mind you, he still wasn't eating a bottle. He was still being tube fed. I I think, delusional. I had this image in my head like, "Oh, today's the day. We're gonna be fine. They're gonna let us go home." I was hopeful. I think I was holding on to every ounce of hope that I could because I was terrified. For the bronchoscopy, let's backtrack a little bit. For the bronchoscopy, Thomas had to be put under anesthesia. That was terrifying for me. I was born and raised Catholic as well, so it was important for me to have Thomas baptized because in my mind, I was convinced he was going to die. I was convinced he was going to go into surgery. I was going to hand my baby over to these surgeons, and I was not going to get my baby back. Um, the PPD was real for me. It was really rough. Thankfully, the hospital that Thomas was at had a lot of resources for me as well. Therapy wise, somebody to talk to. Um, I was not in a good place. Um, I remember the day of surgery. I remember looking at the anesthesiologist and asking her, if he doesn't make it, you need to call me and come and get me so I can hold my baby while he's still warm. She looked at me and her eyes immediately filled up with tears. And she came over and she gave me a hug and she said, your baby's going to be okay, and if something does happen, I will come get you. That's just how sure I was in my mind, made me believe this was it. I was saying goodbye for really a routine stand, but I didn't know. I was a first-time mom. I was scared. I hadn't taken my baby home yet. I've only seen my baby's face at that point without any tubes or wires or tape once. Every other time I looked at his face, he either had a feeding tube from his mouth or down his nose, or he had an oxygen tube or a CPAP mask on. But um, thankfully, it was not. It was not the end for us. It was not the end of our road, our story. So we came out of surgery. Then again, everybody just kind of left me alone for a couple days. I said, okay. They explained he had some um, weak muscle in his lungs. They weren't really concerned about. They had a little bit of a collapse um, in his palate, in the back of his throat, and then that was kind of it. Then they called a roundtable family meeting. I was like, oh, wonderful, we're going home. No, um, one of Thomas's doctors, his ENT doctor, whom has become a very dear friend in my life. She came in and she squatted down next to me. I was sitting in Thomas's little section of the NICU room and I had my mom next to me and I was holding Thomas and she came down and she squatted and she said, "Have you heard the word trach or tracheostomy?" Um, and I said, "Yeah, I've heard it." She said, "Because I don't want you to be blindsided." And in that moment, I knew my world was going to be flipped upside down. I started crying. I said, "Is that what we need to do? Is that?" And she said, "We're going to go in there and we're going to talk about it. We're going to." So we went in and the nurse practitioner was there. She was there. Our nurse was there that day, which was the worst nurse that I've ever had in that hospital. I will never forget her face. She was really just awful. That whole day was just awful for me. But we went in, we talked about it. I was there, my mom was there, Thomas's dad was there, the doctors was there. We left and I remember going back to bedside with Thomas and I fell to the ground like I had failed him. Like I'd done this. It was my fault. This is all my fault. Um, I did the wrong things when I was pregnant. I really, and still I think a little part of me blames myself. I think a mother will always carry some kind of guilt for that. Maybe maybe that's not true. Maybe not all mothers carry a little bit of guilt, but I know I do. Um, is it healthy? No, probably not, but it's another thing I'm working on in therapy because that journey has not ended for me yet. Um, Next week we did the trach surgery. And I remember at that point, Thomas's father and I had split up by then because the day before, I won't even get into it. I'm not going to get into it. It wasn't a good relationship. It wasn't supportive, I think, on either end. Um, I won't ever publicly talk bad about my father's son. The day of the surgery, his dad came in and, said hello, then he went to work. Why he didn't stay, but I was there. My mom, my dad, my sister were there all day. And again, I thought he was gonna go in and I thought he wasn't gonna make it, and I honestly had a plan to take my own life if he didn't make it. That is wild to say so publicly. I know I'm a very kinda open person, but things like that, I've never felt so alone in that NICU stay ever in my life. And now looking back, I know how alone I was not. I had so many people praying for me, supporting for me. My mom was there with me every day. My dad would come most days when he was done work for an hour or 2 to sit with Thomas. Thomas was in the NICU for 99 days. I didn't go 2 days. 2 of those 99 days I didn't go, and I had my dad go and sit with him so Thomas wasn't alone. Um, but I remember, saying that to Thomas's dad, and I just I had it all figured out. If he wasn't coming home, I wasn't coming home. I told him, I said, plan 2 funerals because I'm not I'm not living if he's not. Um, and I it makes me so sad now. Like, I wish this version of me could go back and hug that version of me and just say, "It will be okay. You will be fine. Everything will be fine. This is going to end up being one of the best choices you're gonna make for your son." And it has been. Had I had a glimpse of what our lives look like now, then, oh my gosh, I would have been like, "Yes, let's do it. Let's" all of the things. But honestly, tracheing Thomas, if I didn't trach him, he would have been had to stay in a facility for God knows how long with a CPAP, a mask over his face. No child can live like that. Now he's home and thriving and doing all the things. He's delayed with low tone, but he's doing all the things that he should be doing as a child, as a baby, as a 1-year-old, a 13-month-old as of yesterday. Time is flying. But it's just been really great, and I tried to connect with a lot of moms while I was in the NICU, but it's like, you can only do so much. You can only be there for so many people when you're literally falling apart. I lost a lot of friends. I don't know if I lost them, but we lost touch, which is sad. And I try not to beat myself up about it because I'm always the person of, well, I could have done this, or I could have done that, or I could have done this. But I mean, I woke up every morning. Drove to the hospital. I would drive there in the morning. I would stay there all night. I wouldn't get home until 8 or 9 o'clock at night because I was there with Thomas. That was my focus. And a lot of people didn't like that I didn't reach out to them first. And I think that's really shitty. But I needed people there for me. And if you weren't reaching out to me, we weren't talking because I was busy. After his surgery, I was learning how to take care of a baby with a trach. I was learning all of the things. And I had to learn all of the things because I live in South Carolina now with my parents because um, the situation in Florida with Thomas's dad wasn't ideal for me, and I did not feel secure. I was never in any physical harm. Don't think that, but it wasn't a place where I wanted to have a baby or raise a baby in the environment that we were in. Um, I, you know, I think a mother's intuition must start when they conceive because something in my gut said, Go, go. If anything is meant to be, it will be. Do not keep forcing things. And that's a big lesson I learned in this journey is don't force it. It will come. If it's meant for you, it will come. If it's not, it will leave and not come back. Um, so yes, I am a single mother. I will be 36 next week and I'm living with my mom and dad with my baby. Um, Not forever. This is just a chapter in our lives. Um, I had to quit my job to take care of Thomas full time because nursing in our state is non-existent. Um, Very few and far between, you'll find a home nurse. We had a couple in here just to kind of see what it was, if I could go back to work. It did not work out well. Nobody will take care of your baby the way that you will take care of your baby. Um, we were doing trach care the one night and she just completely let go of it. And I was like, okay, that's it. We're done. I'm not going back to work. We're not having nursing in here. I'm gonna do it myself and that's how it's gonna be. Um, Thomas's dad did not get trained in the hospital. To be fair, he worked full time. Um, but he had visitors on the weekend. So I did it. I got trained, my mom got trained, my sister got trained. And we were able to take him home. Um, while we were in the hospital, I was served with custody papers over Thomas. That kind of added to the PPD, that kind of added to the anxiety, the stress of it all. I just remember being like, what the actual fuck is happening? Like, what is my life? I felt like I was in a movie. I had a baby in the hospital with a tube surgically in his neck. I'm getting served custody papers for somebody who doesn't even know how to take care of him and his trach. We're not even home from the hospital yet. I haven't even brought my baby back from the hospital yet. And here we are. Uh, since then, we've gotten an agreement and whatever. But now that we're home, it's just been really, really great. Not for him, not only for him, but for me as well. I got the help that I needed. We have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy coming in and working with Thomas and doing all of the things. Our physical therapist, I love her. Gosh, she is a godsend. She is absolutely wonderful with Thomas. I cannot speak highly enough of her. I'm going to talk our speech therapist into coming in too. I think she'll do it. But he's a happy boy. We go to story time once a week. He has a little friend group we see at story time. They're wonderful mothers with wonderful children. Um, it's just been so great. And I am so in love with him. And honestly, I would do it all again in a heartbeat. I would do every single thing again just to see how happy this boy is now. He's just happy to be here. What's one thing you'd want another mom listening today to know? Don't sweat the small stuff. Everything feels huge. I know, especially I think within the first couple months of having a new baby, being a first time mom, everything feels like a big deal. Everything. Because it is. It's your first baby. It is a big deal. But don't don't overthink. Don't drive yourself crazy thinking about it. Let it out. Get a journal. Talk to a friend. Talk to ChatGPT. Talk to your baby. They don't really know what's going on, but it's a good venting thing. But don't sweat it. It gets better. It really does. It gets better. no matter what season you're in right now. It's going to get better. Okay. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the things. Share with your friends. Let's make magic here. I can't wait to continue this and grow this journey with you guys. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with a few resources. If you're a parent of a child with a tracheostomy or you're preparing for that journey, please know that you are not alone. There are incredible communities available through your child's hospital, pediatric ENT and pulmonology teams, home health providers, and organizations across the United States. Connecting with other families who understand this journey can make all the difference. And if today's episode brought up any feelings of sadness, anxiety, or overwhelm after becoming a mom, I want you to know help is available. Postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety are common, they're treatable, and you deserve support. Please reach out to your OBGYN, primary care provider, or your child's pediatrician. You can also find resources through Postpartum Support International by visiting postpartum.net or calling or texting the PSI helpline at 1-800-944-4773. If you're in the US or Canada and you're experiencing a mental health crisis or feel like you may harm yourself or someone else, please call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline immediately. Remember, asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. If this episode encouraged you, taught you something, or simply reminded you that you're not alone, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a comment, or share this episode with another mom who might need it. Wherever you are in your motherhood journey, remember, you were never meant to do it alone. We'll see you next Sunday on Oh Baby.